Okay, good morning everyone. Welcome to this special meeting of the Standards Committee for Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. Today is the 2nd of February 2026. I just wish to inform everybody that this meeting will be recorded and that by sitting here and being involved, that means you are consenting to the recording. You agree? What I will now go is to the agenda. First of all, can I have apologies for absence? No one received. Just to ensure that everyone who is involved in the room, and welcome to our guests, can we do some introductions? I'll go first. My name is Mel Jayo, and I am the chair of the Tydfil County Borough Council's Standards Committee, and I'm an independent member of the committee. If I now go to my left.
Follows our PowerPoint. My name is Dawn Jones, and I'm vice chair of the Merthyr Tydfil Standards Committee.
Good morning, I'm Pauline Griffiths. I'm an independent member on the Standards Committee.
Good morning, I'm Jeff Beard. I'm the Community Council member of the Standards Committee.
Good morning, I'm Councillor Gareth Richards, one of the Council's members on the Standards Committee.
Morning, my name is Martin Veal and I'm an independent member on the...
Good morning, my name's David Bennett. I'm an independent member of the Standards Committee.
Simon Jones, I'm a solicitor with the Council and I'm the hearings officer.
Garrett Morgan, I'm the Council's monitoring officer and head of legal services.
Morning, Sarah King, Director of Governance and Resources at the Council.
Morning, Philip Morris. I'm the barrister representing the Ombudsman at the hearing today.
Morning, Rachel Billinger. I'm here from the Ombudsman's office.
Councillor John Thomas, independent council for the County Borough.
Councillor Andrew Barry, Reform Council.
Thank you all. If I now go back to the agenda, then agenda item 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations from anybody here today that impact on anything that's about to be heard today?
Hi, Williams Price.
Oh, sorry. Anna, if you could also introduce yourself, my apologies, online.
Good morning all, Councillor Anna Williams-Price, and I sit as a councillor member of the Standards Committee. Are you happy for me to proceed because I do also need to declare interest in an item, Chair?
Yeah, if you could, I'll just go back now to the declarations of interest then. While you've got the seat, Anna, if you could then give us any declarations of interest that you have, any action that you need to take.
Thank you. With reference to item 3, during the period referred to in the report, I held the role of Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources, and due to this and following advice from the monitoring officer, I will declare personal and prejudicial interest in that item and leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted. Are there any interests? Martin.
Thank you, Chair. In another role, I am the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee here at Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council. I think it's worth declaring that. I do not think it's a declaration of interest. I don't think it's prejudicial in nature, so I'm happy to remain, but it's worth noting, please.
Yes, duly noted. Thank you. Are there any other declarations of interest from anybody? No? Thank you. If I could now go then to agenda item 3, which is the standard hearing and to receive a report from the Ombudsman's office. Is there any observations before we start?
No. Looking at the procedure that we have, the first part is primarily procedural issues. I've had the opportunity of speaking with Councillor Barry downstairs before meeting started, just to work out how this is going to proceed, and I think it's probably best that we just get into it. Councillor Barry's got a little agenda that he's going to go through. He's got the points he wants to make there set out, so I think there's some structure there, which is good. So it says where there are no major issues with regard to procedure, we then move on to the second stage, which is the making of findings of fact. And again, touched upon this with Councillor Barry downstairs. I'm not sure again if there are any major findings of fact there, because a lot of what this is based upon is email correspondence between the parties. I don't think that's in dispute. So again, I'm not sure if there's any major findings of fact that need to be made. I would say that perhaps at this stage we could now hear from the investigating officer or via the barrister. Councillor Barry, anything you want to say at this stage in relation to my brief summary of where we're at, findings of fact?
Only in terms of the political balance that we spoke of downstairs. We've had conversations about Labour Party members being very publicly under instruction to attack reform by any means necessary. That was my only concern about Labour being here.
Could I, as the chair of the Standards Committee and the chair of this particular hearing, assure you, Councillor Barry, that I will be carefully scrutinising what is said and the appropriateness of what is being said. And if I think in any way, shape or form anything inappropriate is said or alluded to, I will alter the hearing today, okay?
Yeah. It's not so much what's being said, it's what I think is by instruction politically is the issue, which is difficult for you to enforce, obviously.
Okay. But in your sums, if I may, sir, so you're happy for us to proceed?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. Anything else?
No, Councillor Barry raised the issue as to the political balance in this committee. This was something we looked at prior to this meeting, and I informed Councillor Barry that our legal view was that the committee is legally constituted. We take a different view.
Absolutely.
But
no reform comes.
But as of today, the legal advice that we have given is that it is a legally constituted committee. So we'll back on. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. On the basis, thank you for those contributions. Let's get into business. And may I introduce Philip Morris from the Ombudsman's Office to give the report.
I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. You will have seen that the Ombudsman's prepared a report which has been circulated prior to today, obviously, in relation to its investigation concerning Councillor Barry. You're dealing with potentially, if we get to this stage, 3 potential breaches of the Code of Conduct. Under paragraph 4B, showing respect and consideration for others. 4C, not using bullying behaviour or harassing any person, and 6.1D, not to make vexatious, malicious or frivolous complaints against other members or anyone that works for or on behalf of the authority. And the source of all of this is an email that was sent by Councillor Barry from the 6th of November 2024, which you will have seen referred to in your bundle, to the Head of Communications of the Council, copying in the leader of the independent group. And the email initially was a request to send him schedules to include headings of authority-sanctioned posts for all of the authority's social media channel output over the past 2 months. That is between 1st September and 31st of October of that year, along with the same data for the previous year. He also asked for the number of deleted comments from all social media channels for the same time periods, and he asked for that information to be provided to him by the 15th of November. That was responded to by the Head of Communications, who explained that, she could ask why Mr. Barry required the information, saying that the team didn't currently have the resources to look at that request, and said alternatively, since the information was in the public domain, Councillor Barry could collate it himself. The response to that from Councillor Barry is set out at page 9 of the Ombudsman's report. And just to summarise, he said, "Hi, when I receive the information, it's for me to decide what is done with it, not for you to question why I require it. Please don't tell me I need to place an FOI, a Freedom of Information request, within my own authority, because that sort of precedent will have some serious consequences. In terms of your resources within the department, am I really to understand you're saying do it yourself? You have indicated some serious issues here around support to elected members, withholding information, and as for doing it myself, how am I to know what you have deleted? This is beginning to look like a 2-tier system of support between Labour and the Independents. I will take advice." Following that email, the complainant, who is the Chief Executive of the Council, emailed Councillor Barry on the 11th of November. He explained that he was pursuing information. He appreciated that Mr. Barry was pursuing information he considered necessary to serve his constituents. However, he wanted to address the tone and the content of the email sent by Councillor Barry. He said it was important that interactions between members and staff maintained a standard of respect and professionalism. He was concerned about the reference to serious consequences in the email and the implication of withholding or deleting information. Obviously, the implication being that there was something untoward going on, and that had caused concern within the department. Effectively, he reached out to Councillor Barry to ask to meet with him to address the concerns comprehensively and to get some clarity about the tone of the communications coming from Councillor Barry. Ultimately, despite a number of requests and emails, that meeting didn't take place. Councillor Barry did not meet with the Chief Executive to discuss the matter. By the 3rd of December, having heard nothing from Councillor Barry, the Chief Executive emailed him again and was following up on the previous email to schedule a meeting, reiterated his concerns, and that if he hadn't heard further by the end of the following day, the matter would be referred to the Ombudsman's office for consideration. That Dilly did not receive any response from Councillor Barry, and so the matter was referred to the Ombudsman. Then on the 10th of January 2025, Councillor Barry wrote to the Director of Governance and Finance, that being the manager of the Head of Communications, so that by way of direct a line there. He said that he was in a strange position, having been the previous Cabinet Member for Finance, Governance and Resources for 7 years, and sought clarification. He explained his request that he made by email back in November 2024, and that he also requested information from another member of the team on the 21st of November on a different matter. He was concerned that he hadn't yet heard from either individual, and said that the failure to comply had many interpretations, and that the Constitution was at odds with the actions of both officers. He said to avoid a possible official complaint, could the Director give her interpretation and save Councillor Barry having to make a freedom of information request to his own authority? The Director then duly responded on the 16th of January and said that the Chief Executive had tried to arrange a meeting to discuss these matters with Councillor Barry. No reply had been received, nor had a meeting taken place. And she explained that the information that he requested in his original email had to be manually collated by the team. It wasn't something that was readily available on a database or something of that nature. And she then enclosed some information that the member was seeking initially, and the matter progressed from there on. Councillor Barry appeared to be grateful for the help that he received there. On the 26th of January, he thanked the Director for her help and said it had been in stark contrast to the replies to his initial emails. Then matters escalated somewhat, because on the 17th of February, Councillor Barry wrote to the Director, but also copying in the Chief Executive, 2 other senior officers of the management team and the independent group leader, and said he was filing a complaint of gross misconduct against the Head of Communications. He said the Director was familiar with the matter, given their previous engagement by email. He quoted from the same parts of the Constitution that he'd mentioned previously, and referenced information members were permitted to see. He also attached his original emails and the responses to them. The concern, of course, here is that it appeared to be the nature of the complaint of gross misconduct, which, Chair, you appreciate is a very serious allegation, was solely the response to his initial email and his dissatisfaction with that reply. There was very little beyond that of substance to the complaint. But as a result of the very serious allegations, the Director responded on the 21st of February, said that it was taken very seriously because of the nature of the allegation, and made the point that regardless of whether there was any merit in the complaint, questioning an individual's capability and integrity was destabilising, affected that individual's well-being and resilience, and the response was therefore made with urgency. She emphasised in response that mutual respect, trust and courtesy were essential to foster good relations, and suggested that members should avoid criticising other members and council staff publicly. Particularly, I think that's in reference to the circulation of that complaint amongst various senior figures, because that could affect the reputation of the council in due course. The Director further referred Councillor Barry to the Constitution, which gave guidance as to the circumstances in which they, as members of the Council, could request information to assist them in discharging their role. It wasn't a charter to have a roving commission to examine any documents out of curiosity. She reminded him about the proportionality of requests and that members should act reasonably in the number and the content of the requests that they make. Ultimately, the complaint was considered investigated, but in all the circumstances it was not upheld, and that was communicated to Councillor Barry that his complaint, that is of gross misconduct, had been dismissed. It's important in the Ombudsman's view that that complaint was only made by Councillor Barry after he had been informed that the Ombudsman was investigating the earlier issue with the email. So it appeared to be somewhat of a reaction or retaliation to that. In due course, the investigation was expanded to include the reference to the complaint of gross misconduct, and therefore those two matters are before you in terms of the facts which you need to consider. You will have seen from your bundle that the statements have been taken from the Chief Executive, who has explained his view of it, and that's summarised on page 14 of the Ombudsman's report onwards. I don't propose to take you through them, particularly given that Councillor Barry does not appear to be contesting any of the material facts before you. But the summary is there for your consideration. And indeed, a witness statement was also taken from the Director of Governance and Resources, Ms King, who was of course present today, and her witness statement is summarised at page 17 and 18 of the Ombudsman's report. She confirms that the time that all of this was happening, it was a time of upheaval, sensitivity and change because of recent changes in membership across the council. And it came therefore at a time when staff were trying to do their best to deal with the requests that were made, and that it was devaluing and unnecessary to receive a message in terms of the complaint of gross misconduct, which inferred that more was being done for others. This is the political bias that was being suggested by Councillor Barry, and in circumstances where staff have been working hard for the last 7 years for the previous administration. Councillor Barry was, of course, given an opportunity to provide his account to the Ombudsman. He didn't reply within the timescales provided, and so did not have a formal interview with the Ombudsman's investigators. He did provide some emails to us, which are again within your bundle, and provided some written comments in there. He did have a telephone call with Ombudsman staff, and again, the transcript of that is within your bundle for you to read in full, should you wish to. Again, the summary of what he said is from paragraph 45 of the report onwards. This is page 21 of the report. He explained the background and that he knew their communications and had known her for many years, having attended the same school and worked with her as a council member for 12 years. Never had a cross word with her. He felt that his initial request was legitimate and innocent. He said that was shown by the fact that the information subsequently provided to him. And there was continual suspicion that he was treated unfairly as a councillor at Leanings. His reference to serious consequences in the email he said referred to the council's democratic mandate responsibilities. And in relation to the gross misconduct complaint, he said that was brought about by the lack of governance procedures and protocols at the council. There was no guidance for councillors about how to complain about officers. And he said, as a result of the lack of governance procedures, I am being sanctioned. And he said that no procedure to complain existed, only an invite to attend a meeting where he was clearly not welcomed. And he was suggesting that was why he didn't indeed have a meeting with the Chief Executive in relation to the matter. He said he was not saying that an individual should be sacked straight away. He was asking, was it gross misconduct? Have a look at the procedures and see if she has done anything wrong. Council did not consider she had done anything wrong, and he disagreed with that. He then went on to talk about what he said was a toxic environment at the council, which led to his reticence about attending a meeting as well by attending the council offices. He was not made to feel welcomed. He was treated with suspicion, contempt and open threats are made to councillors by staff. He said that this was, as he saw it, part of poor treatment of independent councillors by council staff, and was as a result of an internal audit he had arranged to investigate alleged unauthorised payments at the end of 2024, which he said the police were interested in investigating, although no further details in that regard were provided to the Ombudsman. He did not regard himself as a bully. He didn't think it added up. He didn't believe that the head of communications had been affected by this, questioned why she had not made a referral to the Ombudsman herself if she felt bullied, but suggested that the complainant, that is the Chief Executive, had jumped on the issue and made a referral because of the allegations that he had been making, that is Councillor Barry, and the police investigation that he referred to. He said that this complaint was a distraction from all of that. He again went on to say how difficult it was to express how obstructive the council is towards the independent group. He referred to a change in seating arrangements, which he said had been requested 13 months previously, but only happened after Labour took control of the council in that relevant year. Again, to conclude, he said he had not done anything wrong. He was always a straight talker, always had been, was entitled to ask for and be given the information. He was dissatisfied with the response of being told he could obtain the information himself back in the November 2024 email, and that it was not for the head of communications to question this, because he was the duly elected member to represent the public, and she was there to provide the information. In summary, he said it was a witch hunt against him by the complainant and by senior officers. He said that he would not be standing for re-election as a county councillor, and he may make the decision to stand down more immediately in light of his mental health and having to deal with, as he put it, this toxic environment created under the Chief Executive's tenure. So, as a result of those matters, you see from paragraph 46 of your report onwards, undisputed facts are set out there. Confirming that Councillor Barry has been councillor since 2021, and the relevant dates of the emails and the communications are then set out there. I don't propose to take those. Again, they are clearly undisputed. Under disputed facts of paragraph 57 and 58, you have two questions. Was the members emailed on the 6th of November 2024 to the head of communications justified and or reasonable and in accordance with the council's constitution? And secondly, did the members' complaint of gross misconduct against the head of communications have any merit and or was it vexatious or malicious in nature? Again, I understand that Councillor Barry doesn't really challenge any of the events, and they all speak for themselves effectively in terms of what the emails say. It's there before you, but I suspect he doesn't accept the email was unreasonable or unjustified or other than in accordance with the Constitution. Nor, I suspect, does he accept that it was that the complaint of gross misconduct was vexatious or malicious or without merit. The Ombudsman's analysis of the evidence then follows in the report at paragraph 59 onwards, and firstly dealing with the member's email from November 2024. In the Ombudsman's view, the tone and the content of that email was concerning. It was felt that it was belittling of the head of communications by saying that it was not for her to question why he needed the information, and was he really to understand she was saying do it yourself. The suggestion that there would be serious consequences if she was suggesting an FOI request to be made was considered by the Ombudsman to be bullying in nature. The head of communications had not suggested that. In fact, in her response, had made the point that much of that information was in the public domain anyway and it could be obtained by other ways. Given the limited resources available to the council officers, that was simply a suggestion to satisfy Councillor Barry's request in perhaps a more efficient manner. The Ombudsman also felt that it was disrespectful and threatening to suggest the response raised serious issues, as he said, upon which he would take advice regarding support for elected members, particularly given the allegation of it being of a biased nature, support for Labour members over independent or members of other parties. The Ombudsman felt that Councillor Barry's reaction was intemperate and disproportionate to the response that was received from the head of communications. The point that I made just now about resources was explained, but nonetheless, Councillor Barry's response to that was inappropriate. And the Ombudsman's view was that given his position on the council, he ought to have known that the Constitution was clear, that members did not have a right to all and any information requested, and that they needed to understand the purpose of information and the fact that delays sometimes are inevitable in these kind of circumstances. The Ombudsman then felt it was more concerning again that once Councillor Barry was made aware of the fact that officers were upset by his email, that he failed to reflect on that, nor acknowledge the unacceptable nature of the email, nor indeed to apologise for it. He remained of the view vehemently that he had not done anything wrong when he had that conversation that I referred you to earlier with the Ombudsman's officers. In summary, the Ombudsman considers, this is paragraph 63 and 64, that the communication in November 2024 was not in keeping with the Constitution's requirement to treat officers with courtesy and respect at all times. And his references, as I said, to serious consequences, to withholding information, and the suggestion he would be seeking advice on the matter, could be viewed as taking advantage of his position and applying pressure on the officer to achieve the member's goals, contrary to the paragraphs that the Constitution set out there. Then, secondly, in terms of the complaint of gross misconduct, your second factual consideration, was it vexatious, malicious, or without merit? The complaint, in the Ombudsman's view, arose following Mr. Councillor Barry being told that there was an investigation against him in relation to the earlier email. And he said that there had been gross misconduct because the head of communication had refused to provide information to him and had told him to source it himself. In the Ombudsman's view, whilst Councillor Barry was clearly entitled to raise any concerns he had, complaints particularly of gross misconduct are perhaps the most serious nature that can be made about employees. Typically, you may be familiar with this, Chair, from your experience in matters, they're used in situations where behaviour of a member of staff or another councillor has been so serious that it fundamentally breaches an employee's contractual duties, such that severe disciplinary action or even dismissal would probably be appropriate. And in the Ombudsman's view, there hadn't been any basis for making such a serious complaint in the circumstances that we found ourselves in, that Head of Communications had not in fact refused to provide the information to Councillor Barry, nor had she told him to collate the information himself. It was merely a suggestion of another way around the request. He'd asked for information which, as I said, needed to be collated manually within 7 working days, and in response he was asked why he required the information, because the team did not currently have the resources to provide it within that timescale. And she went on to say, this is the particular wording, alternatively, as the information is publicly available, you could collate this. The Ombudsman's view is that it was unfair to characterise that as a refusal to comply with the request, because the Head of Communications had asked for more information. It wasn't an outright refusal. And the suggestion that he collated the information himself was an alternative. The Ombudsman's view is this, that it's unfathomable in those circumstances that Councillor Barry believed that there was merit in raising concerns of gross misconduct about that email, and that the true motive behind it must have been something else. The timing of the member's complaint was also noted to be concerning, and this is set out in paragraph 68. The email that he was complaining about was from the 8th of November 2024. A complaint wasn't raised immediately, though, nor was it discussed with the director or chief executive when Councillor Barry was offered this opportunity on a number of occasions. No formal complaint was raised for about 3 months. And as I say, this was after, on the 20th of January, when Councillor Barry had been informed that an investigation had been opened by the Ombudsman into his behaviour. That was the 20th of January. Complaint of gross misconduct was lodged on the 17th of February. Nothing of any substance had changed between those dates. So the concern of the Ombudsman is that it appears to have been a retaliatory move on behalf of Councillor Barry and an aggravation of the position. What perhaps compounded the problem there was that the complaint, as I referred to, was also copied in to 3 senior members of the management team. And it's understandable that the Head of Communications was upset to learn this, given that, as I say, allegation of gross misconduct is very serious. There are proper channels, of course, by which such complaints need to be considered and to circulate it amongst a wide email trail was also inappropriate, and suggests in the Ombudsman's view that because of all those reasons it was disproportionate to what had actually happened, and that therefore it was a vexatious and or a malicious complaint, that it wasn't really in truth about the history of the matter, nor was it on the merits of the response that Councillor Barry had received to his request. The Ombudsman's conclusions are set out at paragraph 73 onwards, and page 29 onwards of your report. And in summary, the Ombudsman's view is that the email from the 8th of November was unnecessary and reasonable. It was aggravating that Councillor Barry refused to meet the Director and Chief Executives upon having learned that 2 members of staff had been upset by the email. The reference to there being a toxic environment at the Council suggests that alternative arrangements could have been made. For example, if Councillor Barry was uneasy about attending the building, he could have requested a remote hearing or a telephone conversation, but that wasn't done. He simply failed to respond to the Chief Executive's requests. As I said, the Ombudsman's view is that the complaint, which is a very serious one, of gross misconduct, had no merit, was vexatious and malicious, and that further perpetuated the bullying behaviour displayed in the original email from the 8th of November. Beyond that, in the Ombudsman's view, Councillor Barry has shown no real reflection or remorse towards the officer or to those upset by his actions. And indeed, when commenting on the draft report, showed that he continued to hold strong views about the head of communications behaviour, referring to her having ignored the Constitution and having openly broken laws of this country when she did not provide the information to him when he first requested it. There appears in the Ombudsman's view to have been a lack of reflection on Councillor Barry's part about the practicalities of obtaining information at short notice and the nature of the information he was asking for, as I say, without there being a ready-made database to call on to provide that, the information requested. The Ombudsman has taken into account Councillor Barry's right under Article 10 of the Convention on Human Rights to hold opinions, to express criticisms, even if they're controversial. But the conclusion of the Ombudsman is that this is not an absolute right. It must be balanced against the rights of others to preserve their reputations and to be protected from unwarranted criticisms. And in this case, the Ombudsman's view is that the criticisms made by Councillor Barry of the Head of Communications were unwarranted and therefore went beyond any protections he had under Article 10. So for those reasons, Chair, the Ombudsman's view is that those 2 factual questions that you're asked to consider are made out, and I would ask you on behalf of the Ombudsman to find that they are. I think at this stage I can't really assist you any further unless there's anything particularly you'd like me to address you on.
Are you happy to take questions from the committee?
Yes, of course.
Councillor, before I'll keep it to the committee members if they have any questions first, because I will then hand over to you, Councillor Barry, to offer any evidence, etc., that you wish to bring to our attention. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. First of all, are there any questions that anyone from the committee would like to ask Mr. Morris in relation to the investigating officer's report?
No, thank you.
No, thank you, Mr. Morris. Okay. In relation to, I think we can now go to Councillor Barry.
Absolutely.
You can address the committee.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. So I'd frame this by talking about what she doesn't want a name mentioned, is that right?
Could I just suggest, because it is a public hearing and there are sensitivities, could you refrain from mentioning any names, and we'll refer to just
the officers.
Heads of department.
But that I've been told that isn't the case. Do you want to say?
I spoke to Councillor Barry and we agreed that we'd obviously keep the name out, and we agreed a phrase to use. But I can see that when I come in, the term head of communications is already out there. So
okay.
Just call it the head of department.
It's the head of department, fine, from our end. Okay. And then you can introduce any witnesses or anybody who wishes to speak on your behalf.
Yeah. So first of all, I've known the head of communications all my life as a school with her. been in and around politics for over 20 years. I've been a councillor going on to 14 years now. I've been deputy leader, I've been cabinet member for governance and finance for the last 7.5 years. And I've never had a crossword with the officer. What I find amazing is I go into opposition and this is the first communication and this happens, which is difficult to ignore. Let's put it out. What I'll do, Chair, if that's okay, I'll go through the email, the meeting to discuss the gross misconduct, the two-tier system and the evidence, if that's okay.
Yeah, I would appreciate it to actually stick to the issue and what we hear about the facts of the case. And as you said, you've got
unless I see it as framing the conversation, but we'll deal with this. We'll go through.
Yeah, I want to give you the latitude you need to express yourself.
Lovely, thanks, John. So the email was in relation to requests to me by colleagues and by the public about this proliferation of mainly the leader, I think, being on social media on a weekly basis. And then they were comparing it to how much social media was going out for the independent group. I mean, long way to continue because I think he's doing us a great favour by doing his weekly meetings, but the request came from the public and from colleagues, which is why I made the request. It was quite succinct in the request. It was time bound. It was exact in terms of what I required. And then I was really surprised when it came back and said, well, why do you want it? The impression I had was there was an idea that there was a lot more social media going out now than previously. So that the officer knew the direction of travel. I didn't know I was going to come back, so I didn't know what was that information was going to be used for. As it came back, when Sarah provided the information, I've done nothing with it. You know, it seemed okay. But the issue of the request was legitimate. I had the evidence sent to me following 9 weeks. I think it was. I had to wait for it. But I had it eventually. In terms of my response, I explained that when I said serious consequences, I wasn't aimed at the officer, I was aimed at the council. And I explained that it was, what was I to believe we were working in a council where I was refused information as I saw it. That information was, when we say it was gathered manually, I question how long that actually took. Like, I've got Meta Business in my business, and you press, the request for historical information and put some dates in, and it comes. So it wasn't, it's not a manually intensive request to take out. And I'd be interested to hear how long it actually took to collate that information. So that's in essence the email. The meeting to discuss the email. I did provide dates to attend a meeting, but the officers who were to be there couldn't make it. So it did never happen. However, there was a meeting in the summer where it was mentioned at that meeting. There were 10 independent councillors in that meeting to discuss how independent councillors were being treated. Now, that's a third of the council attended that meeting, and shows it is not just me who thinks there are unfair practices in this council. Bullying and harassment of councillors came up at that meeting, and we had a councillor there crying in the meeting, sobbing in the meeting because of the treatment she'd received from officers of this council. I've spoken to her recently. Nothing's been done about it. So in terms of a two-tier system, if you've got a third of councillors attending a meeting about how we are being treated, then that gives you some indication that it's a real concern. And has to be looked at in an anti-democratic framework. If you have councillors who are unwelcome in this authority and don't feel comfortable to come in, then that's really questionable practices. In that meeting, there were also comments of how we've been openly threatened by senior members of staff in this authority. 4 councillors have been threatened, and that information come from several different sources. So I've been here before and I've spoken about this in another meeting, but that doesn't seem to have come out in the report at all. This is the 3rd Ombudsman referral in the last 12 months. And it's not lost on me, it's over the same period as I've become a reform councillor. Over 20 years in and around this council, 14 years as a councillor. It's difficult to ignore. There we are, resilience is something you have to display as a councillor, and I certainly had to do that over the last 12 months. The gross misconduct referrals, of which there were 2. One was for breaking the law, breaking the Local Government and Elections Act. The report just dismisses that. But the fact that there was an allegation and the police had been involved, I can't understand why that was just dismissed. There was no mention of breaking laws of this country in relation to the email and not providing the information. That was in relation to the breaking of the Local Government and Elections Act 1989.
Was that to do with the video?
There was a video that was edited in 2 separate places that the police were made aware of and clearly investigated because it was at odds with the legislation. There were also omissions of videos where no omissions reports were done. Now I know the Director for Governance made comments on it, but the legislation in the Local Government and Housing Act referred to the responsibility of the monitoring officer to provide omissions reports when public broadcasts don't go out the door, not the responsibility of the Director of Governance.
The only reason I asked that question is it was in relation to that.
Yeah.
Can I just also Councillor Barrett, just advise and just lead you, if you could ensure that you sort of do restrict your comments in relation to the facts as presented by the Ombudsman as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it frames it, doesn't it? It frames the 2-tier system.
I did mention I'd give you latitude, but there is a defining point where I understood you back.
Understood. The gross misconduct referral and this tit-for-tat emotional response is something I take absolute exception to. I've run 2 really successful businesses in Merthyr. I've been president of the Chamber of Trade for 6 years. I've been chairman of Georgetown Boys Club for 5 years. Emotional responses are not something I attach myself to. It's in terms of what I've done, I've shown resilience, as I said earlier. I've been adaptable, disciplined, strategic, focused, and analytical particularly. So in terms of this tit-for-tat response, what that shows is the report writer making an assumption with no evidence to back that up at all. It's an assumption, an emotional response, if you will. And what you need for these reports is a high degree of emotional intelligence, because it assists you in writing reports and being balanced and seeing motivations behind how these reports are written. And I see the lack of evidence in there as standing out, and it's the basis of this emotional intelligence that you write the report in the first place. So I took absolute exception to that. The 2-tier system is mentioned in the report. It's something that, as an independent councillor, I've experienced since 2017. Everything's a battle. Delays, obstructions, and And I know it's frowned upon by officers and by the Labour group, but when you're on our side of the equation, it's a real thing. When we tried to get the seating arrangements changed in the chamber, it took us 13 months to get the seating arrangements changed. Labour came in, it was changed in 6 days. Now, they said there was no evidence for that. I showed the head of Democratic Services an email where I first requested that, and a video in terms of when the seating was actually changed. 13 months and 6 days. So you get an idea of why we start to believe it's a two-tier system going. I'm conscious about the payments, the unauthorised payments that have gone out the door, so I won't go into detail with that, Chair. But there are unauthorised payments to projects that are supported by Labour members, and projects that independents are supporting that had money withdrawn. So we'll leave that at that. Thank you. That's another story. There was an issue when we were administration where we took advice from officers to withdraw a substantial amount of money from a project in terms of the budget, producing the budget, which we made that decision. Labour disagreed with it. That was reversed without the acknowledgement of the independent administration. So there are just examples after examples of this two-tier system that we talked about. In terms of the evidence, the police investigation, not that I'll dwell on that.
No, please don't. I just want to concentrate on the disputed facts of the presenting officers.
They have been. The Frost-Fran thing I've touched, so I won't go any further with that. The seating in the chamber trade. Well, the one thing in this whole episode for me is the view of the Ombudsman, the view of senior officers, the view of the complainant. It's all third party. It's a third party view of the circumstances. What there's a distinct lack of here is the first party. Is that person is supposed to have been harassed and bullied. There is absolutely zero evidence in this report of harassed behaviour. I'll give an example of what I mean. If I was to say I was intimidated in its environment, I don't suppose anybody would believe that. But in terms of evidence, if I had a doctor's note, if I had to have a break in proceedings, if I had to have a glass of water, if I was stuttering, if I was sweating profusely, if I had to have time off, if I had to ring 2 sessions, all evidence of me being intimidated. If somebody's been bullied and harassed, doctor's note, medication, time off, crying uncontrollably, arm round the shot, there's no evidence. There's nothing in this report that talks about first person evidence of somebody being harassed and bullied. It's all third party. It's the impression of the Ombudsman. It's the impression of the Director of Governance. It's the impression of the Chief Executive, the complainant. And we know that the complainant has had questions to answer. Don't go into them all, but you know that there are issues here that he has to answer to. And I quite clearly see why he's done this, because he doesn't like to answer the questions. I can't help if I get information, I've got to bring it to people's attention. One of the main thrusts of being a councillor is when you see something untoward, you've got to deal with it. So I've been dealing with it, and now I'm being penalised for it. It just goes to show freedom of speech. We know what freedom of speech is in this country at the moment. The referral I had from the monitoring officer with the issue of the ITV racial issue, which isn't proved.
Can I just, I won't go into it, can I caution you there, because that does not form part of the issues that you presented to us today.
But it's an issue of freedom of speech. And the basis to this is my opinion. When I said, that's for me to know and not for you to question. That's my opinion of it. So freedom of speech, as far as I'm concerned, in this council, doesn't exist. And in terms of and in terms of how I've been treated through this, I don't think the thing that the Ombudsman doesn't realise through all of this is that the process is the punishment. Talk about one email to the head of communications. I've had to deal with multiple emails, multiple requests for information. The process is the punishment, regardless of being guilty or not. And I've had to go through this 3 times. It's been an arduous journey, to be honest, and I'm done with this council, as I said to Simon. This isn't how it should be as for a councillor. We've had to battle for every decision. We've had to fight and cajole, and that's our perception. The other 10 councillors that were in that meeting, that's not right, and it's not the way it should be. I would never recommend anybody be a councillor, because this is not the environment where you feel you can come and represent the people out there and get stuff done. I've no intention of standing again. I don't like being in this building. I don't feel welcome in this building. I've never asked a question from the day I asked that officer, and that's undemocratic. I find out myself as best I can now. But that's no way for a councillor to operate. That's no way for the people out there to be represented in this council. I'll take any questions, but you can see where I am with this. You know, I asked a question, and a legitimate question that was answered after weeks and weeks. There are multiple issues that element of being a councillor, once you find something untoward, you've got to report it and deal with it. Well, I'm done with it. I'm not. I can't spend time on this any longer. I've got businesses to run. In terms of, I didn't reply to the Ombudsman. I did explain to the Ombudsman that during that period, my brother-in-law had a massive stroke, and I was there caring for him. My wife was in France having a knee replacement, and all of that was during this period. And even having said that, they still wrote the report on top of that. So there's no understanding. There's no, as I said earlier, there's no emotional intelligence applied to this. This is just a third party's perception, several third party perceptions. Nothing, no evidence offered for first party bullied and harassed behaviour. Nothing. All we hear is somebody got upset. I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Are you happy to take questions?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've been informed that in relation to somebody. Sorry.
Well, it's only fair, because I think Councillor Barry's raised a few issues about what the council has or hasn't done right, and you mentioned police investigation in relation to a video. Even though we're not here to deal with those issues, that's the background to how you feel, which is generally held. But I think it's only fair for the director to respond to some of those things. I think you wanted to respond to that, Sarah.
If I could, Chair.
You're happy for?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure. Before I bring up the questions from the Senate.
Yeah, I wanted to make a factual clarification actually for the committee. So Councillor Barry just mentioned that the gross misconduct claims that he sent to me on the 17th of February and the 18th of February were in relation to the breaching of the Local Government Elections Act. They didn't mention the Local Government Elections Act. He mentions the video editing of the video recording. That happened on the 5th of March. I received the gross misconduct complaints on the 17th and the 18th of February. And I just wanted to confirm, as I have on numerous different occasions, that obviously the council put a public statement confirming that administrative error had, after the 5th of March, council had led to the wrong video being uploaded. It was correctly, promptly updated with the full recording on the 10th of March. The 12th of March Planning Committee, again, which Councillor Barry referred to in terms of breach of the legislation, wasn't recorded due to a network issue. However, written minutes are available, and this meets legal requirements. So there was no breach of any UK legislation. The councillors reviewed these incidents, as I did, within my department, and we took steps to sort of prevent any future issues with that. Therefore, that is why there is no requirement for an emissions report to be provided by the monitoring officer in that scenario. So I just wanted to, and then confirmation that those issues were raised on the 2nd of April by Councillor Barry in the council meeting. But I just wanted to ensure that those two issues weren't conflated, because those complaints were received in advance of that actually happening. Thank you.
I think the committee duly notes that, yes. Are there any representations you wish to make, Councillor Barry? Well, going into too much detail in relation.
Well, we could go into detail, but you know, the issue is that the legislation requires emissions reports written by the monitoring officer, and they've read that.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Kent. Thank you very much. If we now go, I'm conscious that Councillor Thomas is there. Councillor Thomas is there in his capacity as a friend, I presume, yeah? Not as a witness. Thank you. I wouldn't want to be dismissive of Councillor Thomas. I'll now go to the committee to ask any questions of Councillor Barry in relation to his submission. If I could go from the end. Do you have any questions of Councillor Barry?
No questions.
Marty?
No, thank you. Everything's very clear.
None for me.
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Mr. Councillor Beard? Any questions?
Just one. Can I ask about the gross misconduct, Councillor Barry?
Yeah.
When you submitted the allegation of gross misconduct, what did you believe would be the outcome of gross misconduct? You've said that you are a leading player in the business in Merthyr. Indeed, you've got 2 or 3 businesses. So you must have come across gross misconduct. So you would know, I suspect, what gross misconduct meant. What did you think would happen when you made the allegation of gross misconduct? And why did you do that? And why did you escalate it, please, Councillor Barry?
Well, it's not my business to preempt what was going to happen. It was to investigate, as I explained earlier. It was just to investigate, and it was to investigate because I wasn't given information. I framed that by the explanation of 20 years knowing this lady, 20 years around in politics, 12, 14 years as a councillor, never been refused information previous, 7.5 years governance and finance, and then the first for information, I didn't receive that information from the officer. I had to wait 9 weeks to receive it from her line manager. If that was the way things were to be, and I suppose ultimately where I am today, I've got no interest in standing to be a councillor in this authority any further, because that's not the way it should be.
Thank you. Can I just ask?
Yes, of course.
That's okay. Why did you escalate it? Because you've obviously sent it, from my understanding, reading the facts.
When you say escalate, what are you talking?
Apparently, you sent the same allegation, or the fact that you've made an allegation of gross misconduct, to other senior leaders, or have I got that wrong, Councillor Barry?
No, it was just copied in, that's all. I copied in who I thought were the ones who would need to see it. That's all that was. They were CC'd.
Okay. But within your experience, if you give the information over to the head of HR or whoever,
yeah,
that would then automatically be copied into those that needed to do it. Because what the case of the ombudsman is, that added an aggravating factor to the gross misconduct. What's your experience of that?
Experience of gross misconduct in the council?
Within general, Councillor Barry, I wouldn't know what your experience of.
Can you expand what you mean? I don't know.
Yeah, sure. It's in the sense of, we're looking here at aggravating and mitigating factors if evidence is there to accept that. And the aggravating factor may be that you, in fact, pass it on to other members to exacerbate, to increase.
Just for clarity, that it was one email. There weren't several emails going on.
No, but you copied people in, did you not?
CC'd, yeah.
Yeah,
What I perceived would need to see what I was saying.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Barry, can I just ask? You mentioned and you labelled me that this was they were third-party complaints.
Perceptions.
And actually that the individual that the initial email was sent to, the head of communications, hadn't made any complaint, that all of the allegations were made by third-party complaints. Do you appreciate that an individual who feels intimidated or bullied often does not make a complaint, but it is the responsibility of officers that work colleagues and anybody in their area who believes that harassment or intimidation has taken place? It is their responsibility to take up that complaint.
I think from my perspective, it's the fact there's a complete lack of evidence of that bullying behaviour. If that complaint was going to be made, I would expect to see sick notes, off on leave, uncontrollable crying, medication. There are multiple pieces of evidence that could be presented to demonstrate that this person was bullied and harassed. There's nothing in here. I take your point. I think that's a valid point. We are talking about head of communications or a vast amount of money, and I would have thought if there was anything important to be communicated, that was the very person who could have made that complaint. I take your point, though. I take your point, but there's no evidence. There is no evidence in this report that leans towards anybody being harassed and bullied. So everything we're talking about is just a perception of behaviour, but you have to have an end user, an end recipient. It's like having a murder inquiry without a body, isn't it? Where's the evidence that this person is harassed and bullied? There's no evidence at all in here.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. I would just like to say, do you, in your perception, believe that that your email was justified and reasonable?
Well, first, right, if there was a sanction on this, it would be to have a bottle of wine with Kerry down in Cardiff. So, yeah, just to before a Tears for Fears concert, which we've done previously. I've been out socially with Kerry.
Could you stop?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I've been out socially with her and her husband. I've had great times. I've got no malice or any negative emotion towards Kenny. Sorry, then again. So I've got no malice at all towards the officer, and I like the officer.
Can you? What I'm saying is, can you appreciate that you mentioned perception? You've also mentioned emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Can you understand, and can you tell me whether or not, in your perception, you can understand?
Absolutely.
And using your emotional intelligence,
yeah.
which you've said that you have used all the time in your business dealings, that that the email may well have been interpreted by the head of communications in a different manner, and therefore cause upset. And that upset does not need to be visible. There does not need to be physical evidence, i.e. sick doctor's notes, etc., that you've said. Can you understand that might be the case?
I don't take your point in terms of evidence. Yeah. Look, what's been said here is somebody's upset. Well, let's frame that in terms of an email that upset somebody. Would I do it differently? Possibly, yeah. But the response is way out of kilter from what actually happened. There was a comment made that there's no financial implications within Simon Jones's report. Everything's got an expense. This has probably cost thousands and thousands of pounds, with the time of the Ombudsman as well factored in. Overreaction, massive. It's an email. And
I guess, Councillor Barry, what I'm trying to, the point that I'm trying to make is the intent and then perception, and that's what I'm trying to make. It may not have been your intent to cause upset, but can you understand that the perception of the head of communications was that there was harm caused?
Well, it says in the report about you have to show resilience, and a phrase which is, as for me to know, and not for you to question, you can't show resilience in that. I mean, perhaps it's from my perception, because I have to show resilience. 3 referrals in 12 months. You know, I am resilient. I'm finished with this. I'm done with this council. But I show resilience, and perhaps the question of perhaps she should have shown more resilience is framed in my perception of resilience. So I get what you're trying to say, but I don't accept that.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. I've no further questions.
Thank you, Dawn.
Councillor Barry, can I raise an issue as well?
Yeah.
And it is around the emotional resilience of the staff of the email, your response to that member of staff. What I would suggest is we don't understand what people are going on in their personal lives, which shouldn't affect how they behave in work. But sometimes people come to work in situations where so much other stuff is going on, they come to work, and we need to understand that there are times when we think people are resilient. If we treated people in the manner that didn't cause upset, I know you're saying you couldn't see the physical or emotional upset, or no sick paper or doctor's note. It should never be like that. It is about treating people, everybody, with dignity and respect. Whether you were angered, the fact that you couldn't get the response, the recipient, we don't know what that recipient may have been experiencing outside of work.
Yeah.
And I just would like you to think about that, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's not, I've just got a couple of questions on issues that
absolutely.
And I've written it down, but it's something you just said in relation to Vice Chair's issue. Yeah. Would I have done anything different? Perhaps I would. With the benefit of hindsight, Councillor Barry, what would you have done differently now, knowing what you know now?
Well, first of all, I won't ask any questions of this council.
No. Restricted to the issue at hand, which was the email which you sent to the officer.
Yeah.
In relation to that, is there anything in that particular email that you would do differently now, with the benefit of hindsight?
Well, obviously, obviously, in hindsight, I'm not aware of to your point, or anybody's going through at any one time. How could I be? It was an email. In terms of not receiving information, and the time that I didn't receive the information, having never experienced that before, would I be the same now? I would be frustrated with it. I would be like, well, why aren't you giving me the information? This is a request not from Councillor Barry. This is a request from colleagues and the public that I need the information for. I'm interested to know how long it took to gather information. It's not a big task. Business Meta would provide you with that by putting a couple of clicks and putting the dates in. That was the frustration, I think.
But could it be quite specific? You did say in response to Vice Chair's comments, perhaps I would. So what specifically?
Well, now I know.
Yeah, what specifically would you do?
What did I say? I said, not for you to, I'd have left out, not for you to question. Henceforth.
So you would have done it differently now?
Well, look, of course not. With what's happened, and this all comes back to the complainant. I've heard nothing from, going back to the point, I've heard nothing, no evidence as to how anybody felt over this, or whether they took time off or whatever. There's nothing from the first person. This is all third person. So I'm getting my response, in my hindsight, it's from third person. It's not from the individual.
If I could bring you then back to the issue that Mrs. Griffiths raised with you.
Yeah.
In relation to the impact of the emotional issue, you on a number of occasions you referred to that there was no evidence, say, that the individual who was subject to the email in any way had been stressed, bullied, etc., etc. You were quite clear about that.
Yeah.
So, but I just wanted to know from yourself, do you accept that sometimes it is talk about emotions, we're all individuals and everybody responds in a different way and has an ability and also and has, can respond in a different way and how they deal with it. So, but I just wanted to reflect on this. Do you understand that not everybody goes to the doctor, goes to a lot of people
absolutely
contain it
if there was more first
person, not to the fact that they can still feel
but if there was
what they
more
feel.
first person reflected in the report, which there isn't, then it would be clearer, wouldn't it? But it's not. It's all third person. You accept that?
What I accept is that the individual involved brought it to the attention of her direct line manager and that she felt that strongly about it. Do you understand that?
I get that, yeah. I'd go much a point in hindsight. Then, yeah.
No, that's right. Hindsight is a good thing.
Yeah.
What I'm looking for, Councillor Barry, is some reflection on the journey that you and everybody else has taken in this matter.
Yeah.
And I do agree. And there's a part at the end of the Ombudsman's report in conclusion, and those 4 words really resonated with me. This matter is disheartening.
It is.
But it's come to this. And I just want, at the end, as a chair of our standards committee here in Parliament Council, having received the report, having received your words in relation to mitigation, that I just want to feel that there's been some reflection.
Absolutely. It's ultimately, I've got no interest in working with this council any longer. The individual, there's a good lesson in there.
Can I bring you back to the issue at hand? Reflecting, not in relation to the council, in relation to self-reflection.
Yeah.
I want you to be quite clear. I know.
I suppose the thing is that when you understand how this is framed in terms of the 2-tier system that we have in this organisation, when we have the information that I've had to bring because of my responsibilities as a councillor, all of that sitting together would say to me, I would reflect on, take the frustrations out, accept the individual.
So do you reflect that perhaps you did take your frustrations out on the individual involved?
Well, in that environment, and there's a lot going on in this, in terms
I understand.
There's, investigations. I don't want to mention the stuff again, but all of those issues that are going on that have been my responsibility, and a very small request, very clear, very concise request, was not fulfilled. That was just another example of a 2-tier system. There was, as I pointed out earlier, there are many examples of the 2-tier system that we're experiencing as individuals. 10 other councillors coming in to try and deal with the issues that have simply not been resolved since. But in all of that, I would look at that email and possibly write it differently. But it's hindsight, isn't it?
I'm sure I'm talking on behalf of all of us. We could feel your frustrations, and perhaps the frustrations, a bit on what you just said, were reflected in perhaps the tone of the email that was sent. And I'm heartened to hear that you've said that perhaps now you would, please, I want to get the wording right, may well have written that email in a very different way.
Absolutely. I mean, but it's just understanding that it was another example for me of the battle we've had since 2017 and 2022, and it just seems to be getting worse. There are just the governance I see at the moment is shambolic, and it's just another example of the frustration that builds with independence when they can be seen as treated so unfairly. Councillors crying, this should never happen. You can understand the frustration from that perspective. Right,
and I thank you for your candor, Councillor Barry, okay? I can't thank you for your candor. And is that it? So you're concerned?
In more ways than one, Chair.
I just want to make sure, as I said, I want to give the latitude because you're here to answer shoot praise against yourself, and I just want to make sure that when you walk out of that door, and the chair didn't give me the opportunity. How long you feel about the opportunity?
No, absolutely fine. Absolutely.
Mr. Moran, in relation to your
Just a few questions, if I may, Chair.
yes,
Very briefly. Councillor Barry, you accept as a member of the council you were bound by the Constitution. Is that right?
Yep.
And do you accept that the Constitution says, at paragraph 22.4, that you as a councillor should treat other councillors and officers with mutual respect, trust and courtesy at all times? Do you accept that you were bound by that rule like everybody else?
As are officers.
Yeah, as are officers. Now, I think in your answers to members of the committee, you've accepted to some extent that you might possibly have reworded your email in hindsight. Do you therefore accept that the wording of the email as you sent it was not courteous or respectful to the officer involved?
I see the email at the time I wrote it as being exactly what it was.
That's not an answer to my question.
To the point.
That's not an answer to the question.
So what are you saying again? Repeat the question.
You said you've reflected to some extent on the content of the email. You might possibly have worded it differently, but you haven't been very clear as to what exactly you would have done differently. So accepting that as you have, do you now accept that how you worded it initially was not respectful or courteous?
No.
You don't accept that? Well, how can those both things be true then? What would
Because
you,
those are different time scales you talk. This is in hindsight we're talking about this. We're not talking about hindsight when I wrote the email. So clearly it's not, I didn't see it at the time.
No, I'm asking you now to reflect, knowing what you know now, and like this committee is being tasked with, looking at the content of the email, we've all seen what it says, it speaks for itself. Do you think that is a respectful and courteous email to have sent to an officer of the council?
Respectful and courteous. I accept that. I see it as a reflection of what I thought the way I was being treated was certainly the right way to answer it.
Right. Well, we know, and it's clear from the tone, that you were frustrated at the answer you got to your request for information, correct? Did you take that frustration out in the tone of the email that you sent? In other words, because you were frustrated, you weren't courteous or respectful. That's true, isn't it?
Well, you're suggesting to me now, like I said, that's a different time scale, that's not hindsight. That was how I wrote it at the time.
Oh, I'll move on. I don't think I'm going to get any further clarity from that.
Mr. Martin, I think Councillor Barry sort of did answer the question I posed to him in a way. I'm sure the committee were happy we understood the response. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm not going to go over ground.
No, that's fine.
That's fine. Moving on to the gross misconduct complaint. I'm right, aren't I, that your complaint was purely about the response you had to the initial email you weren't satisfied with? This particular complaint, wherever other complaints of gross misconduct or other complaints you might have made, this particular one was just about the response that you weren't happy with, correct?
There were two, and there was one in relation to the legislation about editing.
Well, we heard that came later, right?
And then there's this one for breaking the code of conduct.
Right. So the one I'm talking about is the one from the 17th of February, the one that you copied in senior management and the chief executive and all the other people we've talked about. And the only complaint you make in that email, and it's at Exhibit CV2 of your pack, Chair, in Appendix 2, for your reference. All you say is this is an official complaint of gross misconduct against Head of Communications. The issues I've highlighted below, you'll be familiar with this information as you officially and professionally dealt with my resultant request to resolve the initial refusal of this information, for which I'm grateful. So by now, you've already had the information that you asked for in the first place, correct? It's 3 months after you had complained about that response initially, and nothing significant had changed between then and you sending this email, had it? There were no other things you were complaining about or issues you were concerned with that you wanted to include in this complaint?
What date was this complaint?
17th of February, 2025.
17th of February. So it was how long after the
Well, the response you were unhappy with was the 8th of November.
Yeah.
So we go from the 8th of November.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to have meetings with the Chief Exec. There's the referral to the Ombudsman, and then you put this complaint in on the 17th of
So
February.
are you suggesting it was a tit for tat? Is that what you're trying to suggest?
And just try and answer my question if you can.
I'm trying to clarify what your question is. You're trying to say it was an emotional response and tit for tat.
My question is that nothing significant had happened between the 8th of November and the 17th of February.
Well, you're trying to suggest then there's a certain timescale that should be stuck to, and there isn't a timescale, is there?
Well,
no, there's not. So, is there a timescale that between a complaint and a gross misconduct? Are you trying to suggest there's a timescale in there?
I'm asking you why you took 3 months to make the complaint.
Well, but are you suggesting that there's a certain timescale?
I'm not here to answer your question.
Can I interrupt you, please? Yeah, sorry. I think the point is, I think we've covered this. I take Councillor Barney's response, Mr. Morris, and I think I know what you were alluding to. Yeah. And rather than it be like a tennis match bouncing back and forth, on behalf of the committee, I think we were happy that we understood it and what you were making.
Yeah, understand. You do appreciate, do you, the seriousness of an allegation of gross misconduct?
I do, yeah.
And that potentially can result in someone's dismissal? Is that a yes?
I think what that is, it was an investigation that was requested into what had happened.
My point to you is that you didn't have any basis to think genuinely that this was a case of gross misconduct, did you? You made the complaint because of your ongoing frustration with the response.
It was no perception again, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the Ombudsman's view, because that's what appears in the documents to be the case.
Third person perception. That's what we're talking about.
And you do not accept any of that. Is that right? Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
No, thank you, Mr. Morris. And thank you for responding.
Sure.
Yeah. And I'm looking on to, are there any other issues?
No.
Should have covered or haven't covered?
No, I think if you look at our policy, it's drafted in such a way that in the first instance we try and resolve any disputes of fact. There weren't really any disputes of fact. We got into submissions.
Yeah.
So what the policy says is we would then determine any disputes of fact. There aren't any major ones that need to be determined. We now move on to determining whether or not, having heard what we've heard, whether or not there is a breach of the code. I think it gives the opportunity to everyone to sum up. I don't know whether there's a need for anyone to sum up, but if you do, Councillor Barry, I don't know who should go first. Maybe, do you want to?
I'll be very brief.
Okay.
Chair, yeah. You've seen the allegations, and I'm not going to go with the factual position. We've had that evidence at some length this morning. But the Ombudsman's view is paragraph 78 of their report, wherein the Ombudsman considers there may be 3 potential breaches of the code here. 4B, and 4C, both refer to the initial email from the 8th of November. And the third one, 61D, refers to the complaint of gross misconduct. In other words, 4B and C are, in the Ombudsman's view, that email was not such as showed respect and consideration for others and amounted to bullying behaviour or harassment of any person. I simply pause to make the point it needn't be both. There's no requirement in my submission for there to be any first-hand evidence or documentary evidence to support, as Councillor Barry said a number of times, the allegation. The facts the Ombudsman say speak for themselves. You have the text of the emails. You have some acknowledgement that perhaps Councillor Barry would have worded it differently, but it's a matter for you as a committee to determine whether or not you think that email showed respect and consideration for the recipient, and whether it amounted to bullying behaviour or harassment. In terms of the third breach, that again, in my submission, speaks for itself, that the complaint of gross misconduct from the 17th of February 2025, and it is important to note that it's just that allegation that is being considered, not any other complaint which has been referred to, whether or not that was made genuinely, as in whether Councillor Barry had a genuine belief that it was a case of gross misconduct that required further investigation, or whether, as in the Ombudsman's view, it was likely to be a vexatious, malicious or frivolous complaint, and either in response to the perceived lack of communication that he had or cooperation, and or a response to the fact that there was an ongoing investigation that he knew about by then with the Ombudsman, and the fact, as I referred to, that the complaint itself was made 3 months after the events. In other words, had Councillor Barry really considered there to be a serious issue to be looked into, you might have thought that he would have made that complaint immediately upon the response that he had, or shortly afterwards, and not 3 months later, by which time, I should say, he had received the information he was asking for in any event. So there was nothing sort of ongoing or hanging for him to consider that something needed to be done about it. So for all those reasons, of course, whilst the issue is one for your determination, those would be my submissions on behalf of the Ombudsman's office in terms of whether those breaches are to be found or not. Unless I can assist any further.
On behalf of the committee, I thank you for your submission. Are there any questions? I don't want to labour the point about questions. No? Councillor Barry, I gave Mr Morris the opportunity to have a final word on behalf of the investigating officer. Are there any final words from yourself?
Just those issues about the time scale of a referral for gross misconduct is spurious as far as I'm concerned. You know, there are no time scales. In terms of I made some great points this morning in terms of you know, where the recipient is. I still maintain this report does not reflect for this party submissions. It's only referred to in terms of somebody got upset. It would have been a better report should the first person have been included to a greater extent within this, so we had a clear idea of bullied and harassed behaviour being demonstrated, because bullied and harassed behaviour statements are straight out of the journal, they're straight out of the Constitution, and I don't know whether, and it has been demonstrated to me, whether that is actually the case for the individual we're talking about. On the point of the Ombudsman, talk about resilience and that. These all came through my door, and it looks quite intimidating when you see all this, until you know that that's not just the 3 lines of the Constitution, that's the whole Constitution they sent me. Appendix, fair enough, also sent me their code of conduct. Intimidation, when you see that coming through your door, can do without that, to be honest. There's no point in sending the whole Constitution. As they knew, I'd been a cabinet member for governance and I had access, clear access to that. Simon and myself and several others had been through every section of that Constitution, reviewing it. So I clearly knew about the Constitution, and we've had conversations, Chair, about my belief in the Constitution and how it needs to be adhered to, and I've spoken to independent groups over the period that I've known you, and we have stressed the importance of this, and I'm a great believer in it. However, on this occasion, I think there's just too much third party, not enough first person in this. A lot of assumption, no evidence for the timelines of referrals, and it has just gone so far. This very, very expensive and time-consuming issue. For example, we're into 16 months since the initial email, and I've been living with this for 16 months, waking up at 4 o'clock most mornings, thinking about, have I done something wrong here? Is this an issue? But for me to be waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, for councillors to be openly crying, it's not the way it should be as a councillor. That's just not the way it should be. It's left a bit of taste in my mouth, the whole process. I've got little, probably less belief in the senior management, certain individuals of the senior management team now than I did before, which is not good for democracy. Not good for democracy in this town. I should feel welcome coming into a building which is the basis of this council. I should feel at ease asking questions, and I don't, and there are 10 other councillors that don't. it's been a long and arduous journey, to be honest. And it could have been speeded up. I think 16 months. I used to write reports on people, Chair, as a disability employment advisor. And my reports, when I wrote them, would have reliability and validity coefficients applied to them. So you knew they were absolutely reliable and they were absolutely valid. And I don't see the reliability and validity in this report. I see third-party perception. I keep saying it, but until I get first-person witness as to what has happened, how they felt, I don't think it's a good report. You can't apply reliability and validity coefficients to this report. It's assumption. A lot of it, in fact, all of it is assumption. There are some details in there, but not to the extent that I would consider this report to be reliable and valid. The time scale is completely unreasonable. 16 months to get to this point today. The other referral I had, I was told I'd do it after 3 or 4 weeks, 16 weeks ago. I don't know what they think they're doing to people by prolonging these cases out. But would anybody want to be a councillor after listening to my story? Would anybody want to come into this building? Would anybody want to face that? No, I won't be recommending it to anybody because it's arduous. And as I said earlier, I'm done with them. I'm not doing this anymore. So I would say thanks for some great points made. It's not going to change my friendship with the officer. I still think an awful lot of the individual because I've known her all my life. How I feel about senior management, unfortunately, I've got to say that hasn't changed. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I just clarify one issue, because it was an important issue about timescales?
Yeah.
Just for you to be aware, this Standards Committee received the investigating officer's report, I think at the tail end of November, early December, and we expedited it with the Christmas period to ensure that you are able to be here today.
Yeah, I got no issues at all, Chair, with the committee. I can see and Simon's been in touch and it's progressed really quickly. The Ombudsman Office, unfortunately, is so slow. I question what they're doing. I used to turn around these high quality professional reports in a fraction of the time that they are doing it. And if the Ombudsman Office could take anything away, it would be speed up your processes, because they are detrimental to individuals having to go through it, regardless of guilt or not.
Thank you. That concludes hearing as such.
Yeah.
We're now, Simon, for me.
Well, the process is
in stage 4.
Yeah. Process is the committee will normally retire now to determine whether or not they believe there is a breach of code of conduct. If they determine there's not, then that's an end of the matter. Everyone's notified. If they determine there is, then there's determination as to whether there should be a sanction, and if there is, what sanction it should be. Now, it allows you to make submission in relation to that. Now, I know you've got time limitations, and I don't want you. Anyway, I don't want to say to you, do you want to make a submission in relation to a sanction when we haven't come to that discussion yet?
No, it won't be anymore.
No,
I'm done.
Okay, so are you happy for us to determine the?
I'll take this away now, and it will never see.
But also to make a decision on a sanction without.
And you will be informed of the decision that we make in this matter. And can I, Councillor Barry, can I thank you and the Ombudsman's Office, Mr Morris and Rachel, and John, as Councillor Barry said, thank you for attending the way you conducted yourself today in a very mature, forthright and frank way.
Thank you, Chair.
As I said, the process does say that we will do it in 2 stages, determine whether or not there's been a breach of the code, and then if it is determined that way, to take representations from yourself, Councillor Barry, and from the Ombudsman's investigator. So I think what we're going to have to do is, and I think I could do with a break now. You have to leave, obviously you do. For me, so I think Chair, subject to what you're in agreement with, we'll have a break. We'll ask the Ombudsman and the investigators to go back downstairs to the room that we had for them. We will come to a decision. If there's no breach, then that's the end of the matter. If there is, then we will hear from Mr. Morris. But you're saying to me you're happy for us to take on board the guidance that we have, and
in my mind, I'll never come to this building done.
Okay, thank you. Okay then, lovely. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Chair.